NFLMAX Radio live tonight, Wednesday, September 26th, as we're approaching week 4 of the 2018 NFL season. We're going to take a look back on the week that was and break down some big-time performances in week 3, along with some big-time busts this past week. So we're back taking over your YouTube airwaves tonight. And as always, we walk Juggernauts here with the hot pineapples. Nick, what's going on, man?
Not much. It was another fun week of football. I'm coming down off my Christian Kirk and Kerryon Johnson high a little bit, starting to just kind of relish in with what's about to come. Just waiting for Chubb to bust out, Tim.
Oh, he's coming, and we'll talk about those guys in a little bit. But we'll dive right into it. The biggest news of the week, breaking news. The Bills Mafia takes down Vegas in a Minnesota shocker, breaking the bank of Vegas and breaking the hearts in Minnesota. Survivor pools were destroyed. All hell broke loose on Sunday. And the Richter scale as well, as the Bills sending an earthquake message throughout the NFL, letting us all know the Buffalo Bills are here to play football. And I mean, are you kidding me? The Bills are actually here to play football on Sundays with that inept front office, that catastrophic offensive line, with no wide receivers or tight ends to throw the ball to, and their best running back, LaShawn McCoy, out for the game with an injury. And here we are, week 3, and leading the Bills at the helm, Josh Allen, putting the team on his back and running the ball 10 times for 39 yards, and not just one, but 2 rushing touchdowns on the day. Josh Allen single-handedly got the Bills the W on Sunday. Now, he may not be faster than a speeding bullet or stronger than a locomotive, but leaping over tall buildings in a single bound, Josh Allen pushing the Y button on his controller, hurtling over defenders and soaring gracefully through the air like Michael Jordan, and absolutely posterizing Anthony Barr in an embarrassment of a tackle. I mean, can you imagine being Anthony Barr on this play when all 6'5", 240 pounds of Josh Allen is flying over you in slow motion, and you're falling to the ground, ripping the horns out of your purple helmet? I mean, it's a bad day. It's a very bad day for the hashtag Never Josh Allen movement. And I'm a member, but give credit where credit's due. And Josh Allen stuck it to the Minnesota Vikings, who's supposed to be an elite top-tier defensive unit, and won the Bills the game 27-6 in a smackdown of the Minnesota Vikings. If you're not inspired by that game, something's wrong. And Josh Allen is reminding us all that we should be believing that we can fly. Believe that you too can touch the sky. And if you think about it every night and day, you'll spread your wings and fly away. Josh Allen, 34 points in an absolute stud performance for week 3.
I think he covered it all. I mean, it was really quite interesting. No one saw it coming. I mean, nobody. I don't even care if you bet on the game. If you bet on the spread, you were hoping that they backdoored their way into less than 17.5 points. Like, nobody thought they would come out and stick it to Minnesota. And Josh Allen looked, dare I say, good. Chris Ivory did what he did. He looked fine. It was a heck of a defensive effort for the Bills. Matt Milano, I mean, dude was everywhere. And it was fun to watch.
Yeah, it was ridiculous. But Josh Allen is up there for quarterback studs for this week. And we're going to go down the list of studs and duds. But he's right up there with 34 points. We just covered him. The obvious guys, Matt Ryan with 54 points, Drew Brees and Cam Newton doing their thing on like a weekly basis. But a couple other guys, Baker Mayfield. It's too late to buy now in Dynasty. Here we go. Tyrod Taylor is absolutely donezo in Cleveland. And he's, for me, such a disappointment because of the weapons they have there and the potential he has. He just couldn't put it together. So for me, I know a couple other studs were Baker Mayfield and Carson Wentz. Who else did you have for studs for week 3?
No, I think you put together a good list. Baker, just watching that game, he's got zip on the ball, man. He can put that ball through the seam, and he's not afraid to sling it there. Like, he doesn't need to see space. He lets it work itself open. He puts the ball to where the receiver is going to be. He doesn't need to see the space before he throws it. And Tyrod, it was incredible to watch him, because when you think about Tyrod Taylor, you think about a guy who isn't going to break your back. There were 2 games in a row where he, just killed that offense. And then he comes out week 3, and we talked about it last week. He was holding this offense back. Man, it was almost painful to watch through the first half of that game.
Yeah.
So Baker Mayfield, I'm excited to watch him play.
Yeah, he's electric. You could tell from the first throw, came out like a laser for Mayfield. So some duds for week 3. We got a question here from John, and he wanted to know, can we give up on Dak? And
yes.
For me,
yes.
You would know you're a Cowboys fan, but for me, he's my number 1 dud here for week 3. I know he's playing in Seattle, but 19 of 34 for 168 yards and 2 interceptions. The question, can we give up on Dak? And like you said, the answer is yes, because let's think about it. A couple of years ago, his rookie season, he came in and everything was lined up for him. He had a top elite offensive line, probably the best in the biz that year. He still had Zeke, yes, but he had weapons on the outside with Dez Bryant and, Jason Witten running in the seam. But all those things are pretty much gone now. You fast forward 2 years later, and it's the tale of 2 stories here for Dak Prescott. I think he's the kind of quarterback where he has to have things in place for him to move an offense and be effective. And it's the opposite, like Russell Wilson, who in a similar situation has a terrible offensive line, not much doing, weapon-wise with Doug Baldwin out and a washed-up Brandon Marshall playing wide receiver and no legitimate tight ends in that offense either. But Russell Wilson can pick the team up and get a win and put the team on his back. And, we haven't seen Dak do that. And he's showing us why he was a 4th-round pick in the NFL draft. So to answer the question, yeah, I'm out on Dak Prescott. I was never really a believer to begin with, but it's just they're going to have to address this for next year and get this guy weapons so he could be productive.
Yeah, I agree. He's, even when he was drafted and after his first year, like my take on him was he's not a superstar, but I thought he was a good fit for the offense because they had everything in place and because he was so efficient that first year. Like that's what his game is built on is efficiency. And even through the first 6 games last year, he was very efficient. Like he was playing good football. I don't know if it's the pressure in Dallas at the quarterback position or what it is, but he just doesn't look like the same guy. His feet are happy. He's grounding a lot of balls into the turf, and I just don't see it for him. It doesn't mean he's a bad quarterback. It doesn't mean he won't get a shot, to hold that job. He's going to be the Cowboys quarterback for the foreseeable future. But, it's maybe a blessing in disguise for the Cowboys that everything around is kind of a reset because they haven't paid him yet. Kind of take the thing down and see, what do you actually have? And if you don't have it, then you rebuild it.
Yeah. We'll see what they do. They got a lot of work to do in Dallas. Yeah. So another dud for me, and this is a guy who a lot of websites had him as the number 1 QB start for week 3. And that's playing against Detroit in Detroit. And that's Tom Brady. And Tom Brady looked lost on Sunday Night Football, 14 of 26 for only 133 yards with an interception. And granted, he wasn't on the field much because the Lions did a good job of that, keeping him off the field with the time of possession. But Gronkowski was blanketed throughout the game, double covered. And, again, not many weapons for him either to throw the ball to. But are we seeing the cliff? The Tom Brady cliff. I think we started to see it last year. He hasn't even thrown for 300 yards since week 11 of 2017. And here we are approaching week 4, and he still hasn't thrown for 300 yards in a game. So I think this is it for Tom Brady. I know he gets my man Josh Gordon back next week, but complete dud for week 3.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Brady. I don't know if I'm ready to say the cliff. I think it's going to be more like a hill. He's just too smart. He's intellectually, he is by far the smartest quarterback in the game. He just understands everything he's seeing. And I think what the Patriots did on offense this year, even with the capital that they put into Sony Michel, I think, maybe is a little telling of how they feel of what Brady has left in the tank. They know this is a last-ditched effort to put weapons around him. You see their trade for Josh Gordon. They're willing to take the risk with the character. You see, the first-round pedigree and Sony Michel. Let's get him a back who can perform in all facets of the game. Not that Rex Burkhead couldn't, but Sony Michel is a little bit more dynamic and has a little bit more juice. Let's wait for Edelman to get back. You've got Hogan, but, right now they are very bereft of any sort of weapon. Sony Michel, is still on the mend from his injury. He's going to take a while to get acclimated. This offense isn't easy to pick up. Josh Gordon obviously was inactive week 1 because, again, it's a hard offense to pick up. No Edelman. And Hogan has proven that he's just the kind of guy who needs a number 1 in front of him. He's a solid number 2, but he needs someone who's going to take the pressure off him. He's not a number 1 wide receiver in this league. Never has been. He was putting up some gaudy numbers, but it's only because he was running across people who took pressure off him. Well, there's no one there now. And so I think Brady's struggling to find someone that he trusts.
So let's move on to running backs. And the running back studs for week 3, obviously, the number 1 choice here is Alvin Kamara, 35 points. But the telling tale here, 19 targets and a 30% target share on the season. This guy's 30% of their passing offense. He's basically playing a wide receiver, and it's incredible. I'm waiting for the regression to the mean and for this guy to come back down to earth. But for now, until Mark Ingram comes in, I guess we're going to see this every week.
Yeah, the beautiful thing about it is like, this is Sean Payton's strong suit. Like, this is what people have always known. He is such a smart guy. And like Sean McVay has so many things in his coaching style that remind me of Sean Payton. And I've been a huge Sean Payton fan from the get-go. And back to his days when he was an assistant coach in Dallas. His ability to scheme for mismatch is unlike any other. The only one that we're seeing right now doing it is McVay. And you'll hear people say Shanahan does it. You'll hear people say even Jay Gruden does it to some extent. They don't do it to the level that these two guys are doing it. And Sean Payton has been doing it longer, and his offense is incredible. I mean, he can scheme people wide open. The mismatches he gets are incredible. He knows how to optimize his players. And I honestly, for Kamara, can't wait until Ingram comes back, because what you're seeing is a heavier workload on Kamara than you want. The thing about Kamara is he's so efficient because they optimize his touches. But when he's running inside, like if you have them up right now, what were his rushing stats for this week?
16 attempts for 66 yards, 4.1.
Okay, so 16 carries for 66 yards. That's a heavy workload when you add in those receptions. I mean, that is not, as a Kamara owner, that is not something that you want to see on a weekly basis. I can't wait until Ingram comes back. I'm not a Kamara owner, unfortunately. I wish I had at least a couple shares. Actually, I think I do have one share. But what I would be excited for is when Ingram comes back, he gets that inside work. You take the pressure off, and you can continue to optimize touches and let Kamara run outside on a gap scheme, and let him, let the offensive line manufacture a hole and then watch him hit it. I don't want Kamara banging it inside. I don't want him to get that inside work. Yeah. And I really think next week, you might kind of see them back the load off a little bit, because you can't have Kamara getting 30 touches in a game. That's just,
it's crazy.
To be good for his year-long prognosis.
Yeah, he's 30% of the offense, which is incredible.
It's incredible. But you need to optimize those touches, and that's the key there. I'm fine with the 19 targets. It's like McCaffrey. That's where they're optimized in that role. So let's keep them there.
Yeah. And speaking of McCaffrey, another stud for week 3, this time on the ground. 28 rushes for 184 yards and only had 2 targets. It was like the opposite last week, but 21 fantasy points in a PPR. Christian McCaffrey doing his thing again.
This is what I wanted to see out of CMC. And he was my number 1 running back coming into the draft last year. This is what I thought we were going to get out of him. I really saw someone who could live on the interior. Like, I didn't see a running back who was going to be, kind of strictly a pass catcher out of the backfield. But that's what we've seen so far, because he struggled to make the first man miss last year. He was struggling to wiggle between the tight spaces, and this year you're not seeing those struggles. You're seeing a guy who is optimizing his touches, whether it's from the backfield in a carry form and the interior, or it's out of the backfield catching the ball. And I mean, he looks every bit of someone who's a top 5 dynasty back moving forward.
Yep. And he was running the ball inside this week. Couple other guys, the obvious ones. We got Carlos Hyde on Thursday night, 24 fantasy points. It's just a matter of time before we see Nick Chubb. I'm dying here for Nick Chubb to get the ball.
Oh, man. If I didn't have Chubb like everywhere already, I'm kind of mad I took him at like 3 overall in all my drafts, or moved up to 3 overall to take him in all my drafts, because had I just been patient and let the board fall, you could acquire him for like, relative to what I had to buy him for, I could have bought him for dirt cheap. I mean, people are giving up on Chubb. It's wild.
It's crazy.
Look at Hyde. I mean, he's a good back, and I know you don't subscribe to that. I actually like Carlos Hyde. I do. I think he's a good back. Like, he's been efficient in San Francisco. He's efficient here in Cleveland. Like, with Baker coming in, his stats probably get even better, but it's Carlos freaking Hyde. It's the dynasty lesson that talent will overcome. Chubb is a better running back, hands down. He's a better running back. He's a better athlete. He can do more things. He's more versatile, and he's better in every facet of the game. But Hyde is just good enough to keep him on the bench as a rookie for the first half of the season. Buy Chubb now, because number 1, he's going to take that job. And if he doesn't take it, Hyde will be injured first. It's one of the two things that's happening this year. And I am like gripping, even though I lost Delaney Walker and Andrew Luck was a bust at my quarterback position and I need to stream both of those in redraft, I refuse to let Chubb out of my grip in redraft because he can be a league winner.
Absolutely, in the second half of the season. Moving on at the running back position, a couple other studs for this week anyway. Chris Carson, 21 fantasy points in a PPR. But the telling tale here is 32 carries for 102 yards, 3.2 yards a carry. What do you think about this 32 carry performance?
Oh, man. I know you said buy him a couple weeks ago. I wasn't a subscriber to that thought, and I'm still not. He doesn't look special, but 32 carries is a lot of freaking carries. And all that means to me is I'm not even really worried about Chris Carson. Go buy Penny. Like, I'm not a huge Penny fan, but he's got first-round pedigree, and those guys historically hit. Like, go get Penny now. Like, and pitch that to the other owners. Like, yo, this guy's getting 32 carries. You think Penny's, and we talked about it last week is, when the game was on the line, who did the Seahawks have in? It was Penny. And until Chris Carson stopped playing on special teams, I'm still not subscribing to the idea that they think Chris Carson is their starting running back. 32 carries makes sense against the Cowboys. Like, that line is strong. That line gets penetration. Like, there's no need to put Penny in there to get beat up. Like, let Chris Carson take the 32 carries, plod along, put up minimal stats at almost like just above 3 yards per carry, and you still win the game. It's fine. The Cowboys aren't a good team. They're a 4-win team this year. Like, there's no point in putting Penny out there. But if you're a dynasty owner, read between the tea leaves here. 32 carries does not mean that Chris Carson's their lead back for the rest of this year. Go buy Penny if you can get him.
Yeah, and obviously Chris Carson, I'm not buying in dynasty. I was talking about redraft. So let's move on here. Another guy I just want to throw in here, Gio Bernard, 20 points this past week, and pulling up his stats here, but a very sneaky buy and a very savvy buy because we don't really know what Mixon's going to look like when he comes back, and this could be a lingering injury for the rest of the season. And Gio's got RB1 upside in a PPR. So he had 12 carries for 61 yards, 5.1 yards a carry, and a touchdown. But he had 9 targets and caught 5 of them for 25. So he's going to be involved. He's going to be the running back one for this team until Mixon comes back. But like I said, we don't know what's going on with Mixon and what he's going to look like when he comes back.
Yeah, Gio's a talented player too. I mean, he always has been. It's just a matter of size. He's not prototypical. He can't be a bell cow, but man, he is super talented. And I would argue that he outplayed Mixon last year. And so with that argument, that was a big reason why I was buying him in a lot of startups this year. I probably have him out of 22 leagues. I probably have him in half of my leagues. And, I'm just very happy because I think he can move on and be a player elsewhere too. Like, I don't think he's done when his days in Cincinnati are over.
Yeah, agreed. So let's go to running back duds for this week. And for me, the big dud for me was David Johnson. And I know he scored a touchdown late in the game and that salvaged his day. But here's the deal. You got to buy David Johnson right now. This is the time to buy David Johnson. He's coming off a very quiet first 3 weeks, and it's not really his fault. The Cardinals were up 14-0, and they got Chase Edmonds in on first down. I mean, what are you doing in Arizona with David Johnson on the sideline? So clearly they're not using him like they did a couple years ago. I don't know why, but there's not enough David Johnson usage on the field. And I'm buying David Johnson right now in Dynasty because he's David Johnson. So he's my dud for this week, but moving forward, he's got to bounce back.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're going to subscribe to that notion, the only way you're going to get him at the price that you want him is to look at, a team who maybe is 1-2 or 0-3. They're struggling. They don't foresee themselves as contenders if he continues on this path, because a lot of teams are built around David Johnson. A lot of teams are built around his production being assumed at a high level. And, 17 points is nothing to scoff at, but when you look how he did it, it wasn't anything that was even resembled, something that you can count on weekly. So it really depends. And if you're going to buy, you got to target those teams that are 1-2, 0-3, are going to start looking ahead. So if you can package pieces together and use maybe one of these young running backs to go grab him as a contender, like, you take the upside swing. One thing in my mind that I always do with redraft is I bake in the upside. I'm willing to take some shots in the middle rounds that other people maybe are still going for consistency. I'm going to take a couple swings for the fence. And I think if you're a contender in Dynasty, that stuff doesn't change. You have assets. Yes, you're looking at the long-term picture. But just like the NFL, you only have such a short window to make a move. And if you think you're a contender, don't blow the whole thing up and don't mortgage your future. But if you can take maybe one of these young running backs and get a guy like David Johnson, who you still know has a year or two in the tank, he's still going to be a super bridge type player next year where, he's still going to be a guy that you can put in your starting lineup and, he can win you a week. Like, even next year, like, I'm not blowing up my team to win this year and then he's a dud after this year. If you're doing that with Adrian Peterson, that's the kind of thing that can ruin your dynasty team. Buying a guy like David Johnson, who's going to be viable for 2 or 3 years, is not blowing up your team, but it's not necessarily giving you that extended runway that you want in dynasty either. So in my opinion, you have to be a real contender to do a move like that.
Yeah, agreed. A couple other bad performances, just real quick. I'll run down the list. Kenyon Drake, 3 points. Frank Gore is getting more carries than him. Rashad Penny, we talked about, 1 point. Chris Thompson, 3 points. And this is all PPR. And Latavius Murray. I mean, this was his opportunity here with Dalvin Cook out again. And he just completely disappeared in the game. I mean, this guy is absolutely worthless. You can cut Latavius Murray. He's an absolute roster clogger and a waste of a roster spot.
Are you out of your mind?
Latavius Murray?
Yes.
What did Latavius Murray do in week 3?
Look at the game script.
Oh.
Look at the game. They were down 27-0. You think they're going to hand the ball to Latavius Murray? They gave him 2 carries. His opportunity. You
Dalvin Cook is coming back.
Carries.
Dalvin Cook is coming back.
I don't care if Dalvin Cook goes down again, which he's shown now 2 times in the matter of 4 weeks of actually playing on the field. Latavius Murray is one of the most valuable handcuffs in the NFL. I don't care what you say. With the weapons on the outside, with Kirk Cousins at quarterback, and with Kyle Rudolph at tight end, that is one of the most valuable handcuffs that you could have in the NFL. If you're listening, don't listen to Russ. That's bad, awful dynasty advice. Do not cut Latavius Murray.
What is he going to do long term?
But actually, you know what? Cut him. Go ahead, Russ. If you have him anywhere in any league that we're in, cut him. Because I
don't have any Latavius Murray.
50% of my waiver wire budget on him.
I want nothing to do with Latavius Murray. And a couple of guys last. Speaking of bums, Tennessee's backfield, Derrick Henry, Deion Lewis. I mean, come on here. 18 carries for 57 yards. Now, it's been pretty horrific for Derrick Henry, but if there was ever a chance to buy low on this guy, now's the time. I've got a couple shares of him, unfortunately, and he's pretty much worthless in a PPR. But the game is coming where he's going to have 100 yards rushing and a touchdown. And, they're feeding him the ball, which is a good sign. And, but that's pretty much it for Derrick Henry. I don't know.
It's awful when you're sitting there with Derrick Henry and there's so much promise, right, coming in, and you're like, oh, Derrick Henry, this guy's going to take such a huge uptick. And then I'm sitting there in week 3 and I'm debating for my last running back spot. Should I start Derrick Henry, TJ Yeldon, Gio Bernard, or Latavius Murray? And I have all 3 ahead of him.
Yeah.
I mean,
and I still wouldn't start Derrick Henry.
That's what I'm saying. I had all 3 of those guys ahead of him, and they're clear backups coming into the season. It's like, what the heck is going on in Tennessee? It is a absolute dumpster fire over there.
Yeah, that whole roster, there's not one player on offense that I want in a redraft situation.
In redraft, yeah, you're absolutely right.
So, okay. So a couple of holds here before we go to wide receivers. Guys that I think are going to have a really good uptick soon. One of them is Duke Johnson. With Baker Mayfield at quarterback now, you can see he got a couple targets already in that game. And I can see a slight uptick with him playing the satellite role in a PPR format, scoring some points, even long-term in Dynasty. And, I'm buying Duke Johnson right now.
Yeah, no, I'm fine with that. The problem is, like, you have to hold him because what are you going to do with him? No one's going to give you a second for him. So you're kind of in that middle territory where it's like, no one's going to really give you a second for him unless they believe what you just said, that he's going to see an uptick with Baker. But you're not going to sell him for a third. Like, his value is on your fantasy team is higher than a third round pick. So it's like that funny middle ground where you just got to hold him.
Yeah, you got to hold him. I mean, the perfect scenario is Nick Chubb is the workhorse, Duke Johnson playing that satellite role, and Baker and Carlos Hyde off the team. But, dreams, maybe they'll come true next year. Real quick, Sony Michel seen an uptick in snaps and carries. Philip Lindsay got ejected. We'll see him next week. I know we both disagree on Philip Lindsay. But Ito Smith, this guy could be the Tevin Coleman of 2016. I don't know what's going on with Devonta Freeman and his injury. And when he comes back, who knows how effective he'll be. But Coleman was kind of ineffective in a blowout game. Didn't really do much. But Ito Smith, if he could play that satellite role and do what Coleman did 2 years ago out of the backfield, catching the ball, Ito Smith is one of my sleepers moving forward, especially for next year when Coleman's gone.
Yeah, he's definitely explosive. He's got some juice, nice wiggle. So he's definitely the kind of guy who you'd want to see optimized touches for. You don't want him running, in the interior, but fun player to watch for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm just going to throw in a couple.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, so one guy that I'm buying right now, and when I say buying, it's literally free. If you're playing a dynasty, just from a roster construction standpoint at the back end, the one guy that I'm buying right now is Stephen Ridley. And you think Stephen Ridley, really? But the thing that made James Conner so valuable as a handcuff was the opportunity and the opportunity within that offense. Because they feature the running back so much, James Conner may not even be a dynamic talent. I think he's a good football player, but he's not a dynamic talent. But the way that a running back is utilized in that system, you're locking yourself in production. So right now, James Conner, he's the guy. Even if Ridley had 3 carries and James Conner didn't light the world on fire on Monday night, but Stephen Ridley, the potential that you have if James Conner goes down is Stephen Ridley could do 70% of what James Conner's doing, right? So James Conner does 70% of what Le'Veon Bell was able to do within the offense, and I think Stephen Ridley is able to do 70% of what James Conner is able to do. And if James Conner is putting up 17 PPR points kind of as like a floor in that offense, you're talking like 12 to 13 point floor for a guy like Stephen Ridley too. So he's definitely a guy that I'm buying as completely free right now.
Yeah, he's totally free. But, obviously you're talking redraft and dynasty. He's worth, nothing.
No, but I mean, if you get someone who's in desperation mode, can you flip them?
Oh, yeah. I mean, but you're banking on a Conner injury.
Oh, yeah, you're banking on it. But, I mean, if you're going to sit there and hold a guy who's 4th on his depth chart at wide receiver, from a construction standpoint, to me, I'd rather have the guy who's 1 snap away.
So that'll be it for running backs. And we'll move on to wide receiver studs for week 3. And this was crazy. This was a who's who all-star affair. Basically a cast of replacement players for the most part. I mean, if you were starting any of these studs this week, there's something wrong with your dynasty roster or even your redraft roster.
Because I would say one of them is viable to start.
Exactly. So most of these guys, and we'll start with the big dog, for week 3, Calvin Ridley. So I'm pulling up his stats here right now, but as they're coming up, 40 points in a PPR and 8 targets, 7 receptions for $146 and 3 touchdowns. Now, if you're in redraft, you're blowing your budget for Calvin Ridley probably. And, here we go. The hoopla begins. But I'm going to take a step back here and let's put things into perspective. Calvin Ridley is still the Atlanta Falcons wide receiver 3. Julio Jones ran 90% of the routes as always. And Mohamed Sanu ran 85% of the routes on Sunday, who's second to Calvin Ridley running 71. So Ridley, put up this monster game, only running 71% of the routes. But again, he's facing PJ Williams on the Saints, who is the third cornerback on the team. And meanwhile, Julio's facing Lattimore and still without a touchdown on the season, which is incredible. But yeah, Calvin Ridley, we got to temper expectations here after he blew up in week 3.
Yeah. I mean, I think we all know my feelings on Ridley as a whole and his long-term outlook. One of my buddies brought to my attention, there was apparently some weird stat going around that Calvin Ridley at home is a beast, and he was kind of challenging me, posing the question of let's look into players at their home versus away splits. And I was like, yeah, that's interesting. So I'm going to dive into that with him a little bit this week, but not something that changing my view, long-term dynasty outlook. I still don't like Calvin Ridley. I mean, you look at the target share so far on the season, it's 31 targets to Julio, 15 to Ridley, and 14 to Sanu. And then you've got Hooper coming in there, probably somewhere close around there, right behind them. So you've got Julio way above, and then everybody else kind of falls into that 2, 3, 4 tier. There's no clear, distinction between him and Sanu. I just think it was a situation where clearly the Saints defense isn't as good as we thought it was. And Marshawn Lattimore had, Julio locked down all day. So where else are you going to go?
Yeah. I'm not even buying him in redraft, Calvin Ridley. I mean,
no, me either.
He's going to be the number 1 waiver claim this week.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And he puts up gaudy stats like that. I hope people blow their whole budget on him. Oh
yeah. He's never doing that again the rest of the season. No way. Other guys here, Robert Woods doing his thing. And this guy, 11 targets, 10 receptions, 104 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Certifiable wide receiver 1 now in that offense. It's just, all those guys.
Yeah, who isn't? Who isn't in that offense?
Yeah, so we're going to see him week to week put up wide receiver 1 numbers. But, the ugly studs here, Jakeem Grant only played 7 snaps on Sunday. And so did Albert Wilson, but he didn't do it. Grant did. And Devontae Parker, 29 snaps. But Jakeem Grant, man, he's going to be another waste of a redraft waiver wire ad this week.
I added him in Dynasty. You see that?
I saw you picked him up.
I added him before this week.
Before?
Yeah, I didn't play him. I added him before and the spec that, he's kind of just a super freak athlete. Very, very, very undersized, though. He's going to be someone that I probably toss back in short order here. But.
Yeah. Lastly here, Mike Williams. We got to touch on him because he's a red zone monster. And 2 touchdowns on Sunday. Seeing an uptick in that offense. I like Mike Williams this year. I think he's going to be good the rest of the way. And Keenan Allen was invisible, but he has a long history of getting hurt. If this guy goes down again, Mike Williams will be the guy with the Chargers.
Yeah, and this is, again, just a case of buying into pedigree. It was you've got him in places because people were giving up on him all of a sudden, but he was the number, 7 overall pick in that draft, right behind Corey Davis at 5. It's you can't give up on players like that in the NFL. Teams don't take players that high unless they really believe that they're going to be around for a second contract. That's the only players that you take in the first round are people that you foresee producing on the first 4 years and that you see keeping around for another contract. So Mike Williams is that guy. I don't care how crowded the depth chart was with Tyrell Williams, Travis Benjamin, whatever bums you want to throw out there on the field, Mike Williams is more talented than them all, and the pedigree is there. They're going to give him a shot to excel. And what you're seeing now is he's rising to wide receiver 2 behind Keenan Allen. I'm not saying he's going to take over wide receiver 1. But you've got Keenan Allen and Mike Williams on the field, and you can run Tyrell as your 3. I mean, it's a fun offense to watch. The Chargers are.
It's a very fun offense to watch. Any other wide receiver studs for week 3 you want to talk about?
Yeah, just Tyler Boyd. Like I said last week on the air, like I'm not buying into the hype. I mean, his target share has been like pretty incredible when you look at it. He's far and away the number 2 option. He's a super freak. He was taken in the second round in the draft. So he's a guy who I have to put on notice, I guess. You got to start watching, and AJ Green still commands the double teams. And so when he's on the field, Tyler Boyd's going to look that much better. AJ Green's a little dinged up, so we'll see if he plays this week or not. Can Tyler Boyd make the same type of effect? But again, with the pedigree lesson, I'll bring it up again. I brought it up last week. I'm still buying on John Ross. And there's no guarantee it'll pan out, but at 10th overall in that draft behind Corey Davis and the aforementioned Mike Williams, like I'm still buying John Ross because Tyler Boyd is strictly a slot guy. Yeah,
I'm not buying John Ross, but I get it with the pedigree, but a lot of drops, John Ross. But we'll see. Tyler Boyd. So what about anybody else here? Wide receiver?
You really want me to say it, don't you?
I mean, I'm waiting for your boy here.
I was going to let you bring him up, but Christian Kirk, I mean, come on. He's got me smiling. He's the lone bright spot in that offense. He's going to have good rapport with Rosen. And, I mean, he is every bit of what I thought he was, which is going to be in Dynasty a solid wide receiver, too, for the rest of his career. He's the type of guy who's a possession receiver. He can break the big play, but that's not going to be his MO. He's going to go get you 15 yards on each reception, though. He's a guy who can work over the middle. He's super talented. He can work in the slot. He can work on the outside. He probably profiles a little bit better the slot, which is where Larry plays right now. But, I mean, he can do it all. And they're going to hopefully come up with some creative ways to use him. We'll see. That's assuming rational coaching from Wilkes, but here's to hoping because he's a good talent.
Yeah, he's looked good the past couple weeks coming on. So I'm definitely excited to see what him and Rosen can do together. So let's move on to wide receiver duds for this week. And man, very, very disappointing. A lot of number 1 wide receivers in their respected offenses putting up garbage points here. Larry Fitzgerald, 3 points. We talked about Amari Cooper, 4 points. Keenan Allen, Corey Davis, Stephon Diggs. Stephon Diggs, Adam Thielen, the target hog in Minnesota. I mean, it's crazy. Here we are over the summer talking about the two, and I'm all on Stephon Diggs, and I thought that they would make him the target hog, but apparently it's the Adam Thielen show in Minnesota. Is it crazy or what?
No, I mean, it's pretty fascinating. I sent you the target chart earlier today, and the target right now, the leading target getters on the season, Adam Thielen at 44, Stephon Diggs at 25. So it's not even close.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's not even close.
That's got to change.
Yeah. And you know what? That was the thing. Like, I went back and watched the game because I just had to watch Buffalo play football, actual football. So I did go back and watch that game. And it wasn't so much Thielen's production. I didn't feel like he had a great game. I just felt like, where else do you go? And there was no separation with Diggs at all. And it wasn't as much a testimony to Thielen's ability as it was to Diggs' lack of ability to separate. in this game. And we've seen Cousins kind of hone in on a target before throughout his career, whether it was Crowder that 1 year or whoever, he kind of hones in on the target. And so if we're going to start seeing the targets flow to Thielen, you might think it has to change, but there have been years in Cousins' career where he picks one guy and he'll flow targets that way. So it's something to keep an eye on because, with the presence of Stephon Diggs, you can still pitch that to your league mates and, maybe not get a discounted price, but may not have to overpay for a guy like Thielen.
Yeah, absolutely. I would definitely be buying Stephon Diggs right now. Kelvin Benjamin doing Kelvin Benjamin things, 6 points. Nelson Aguilar, Allen Robinson, Keelan Cole, and Tyreek Hill. All of these guys, single digits and complete duds for week 3. So I'm looking for bounce back performances from all those guys.
Yeah, and I think one interesting thing to note from Tyreek is, they're still trying to hammer him down the field with big plays, but you're starting to see Sammy Watkins take a presence in the middle of the field. So it's just something to keep an eye on. People I think automatically assume Tyreek Hill would be the de facto number 1. You're starting to see Watkins come in. They paid him big money. He's starting to be a presence over in the middle of the field. I think he can really be a hindrance on Hill. Maybe not to the point where you rely on that deep touchdown, but I think you're going to be on the edge of your seat a lot more than you might have thought coming out of week 2. So
yeah.
And then just one more stud I want to throw in. I forgot to mention.
Who's that?
He's in the back of my mind right now. Mike Evans.
Oh yeah.
I mean, in that offense, like they're featuring him. He looks like a beast right now. He is a target hog, and he's high-pointing the ball. He's doing everything that he needs to do. And I know you thought he was overrated. I know you weren't a buyer in the offseason, but to me, in my mind, he was still a top 3 dynasty wide receiver. That's where I was treating him, in the same tier as Hopkins and OBJ. And for me, just watching his performance the first 3 weeks, and on Monday Night Football, dude can ball, man.
That touchdown on Monday Night Football was absolutely insane.
Dude can ball.
He's a beast. And I changed my tune on him over the summer, because you look back at the past couple of years and the inefficiency's there, you need the targets for him. Yeah. But, we talked about it last week. You don't need it. He can do his thing. He doesn't need the 150 targets. But yeah, Mike Evans, man, he's incredible. And all these guys will be bouncing back week 4. So let's move on to tight ends, tight end studs. And here we go. The number 1 tight end, Dallas Goedert, had 52 snaps in the game, and Philly is running 2 tight end sets. And he's bigger than Ertz. He's better than Ertz, and he's better than Ertz. Zach Ertz owners for this year should be concerned because Dallas Goedert is not going away. He's going to be an integral part of that offense with 2 tight ends, like I said. And he just looks dominant out there. It's incredible. And he only had 52 snaps.
Yeah, and when you take a look at the target chart for Philly, it's 33 targets to Ertz, it's 25 targets to Aguilar, and then the next closest guy has 15 targets. What Ertz is doing is off volume alone, but what people are failing to see in his consistent production from a volume standpoint is Goedert is getting those red zone looks. Goedert is a beast down there, and it's no longer just fodder in the offseason where they say oh, this guy is a beast in the red zone. He's going to get so many targets down there. You're starting to see it in action now. He's starting to get these red zone looks, and he's capitalizing. And, I'll say it. I said it a couple pods ago, I think even coming into the season, but I'll say it one more time. The Eagles have a big out in Ertz's deal after this year. And the deal that they signed him to was borderline stupid. And Philly doesn't typically make too many mistakes like that. And I don't think they did it with the thought in mind that they are going to pay him, because if they do, it was a stupid contract. But if they actually capitalize on their out this year and get out of the deal because it was backloaded. It was a genius move. And they'll have Ertz. They get to bridge the gap with Goddard for a year, and he can take over that role, and he can be every bit as efficient as Zach Ertz is.
Yeah, we'll see what happens next year. But I really like Dallas Goedert for this year too, even though he's a rookie. I did forget to say Vance McDonald because that literally just happened Monday night. And his performance, it's just crazy between Jesse James week 2 and now Vance McDonald week 3. 5 targets, 4 receptions, 112 yards, and a beast of a touchdown.
And see, that's what I kind of expected out of Pitt, was like Vance was going to take that job. Like we talked about it last week. You asked me if I was buying in on Jesse James. Like, no way. It's Vance's job all the way.
He's a way better athlete than Jesse James.
Oh,
anyway.
Yeah, it's not even close.
So moving along here, George Kittle piques my interest now because Jimmy G's out for the rest of the year in San Francisco, and CJ Beathard will be quarterbacking that team. You know, this could be for the rest of the way, George Kittle getting peppered over the middle with targets. And he's already, a top scoring tight end here, 15 points last week with 80 yards and 5 receptions. But I'm looking for a good rest of the way here, even though CJ Beathard is going to be quarterback in that team. I don't think he has any issues the rest of the way. What do you think about Kittle?
It's so interesting because like 2 weeks ago I watched that game because I had Kittle and I was on the line for winning DFS, and he was the last player I had in my lineup, and he dropped a huge pass that could have made his day like so much better. And what does he come back and do this week? Drops a pass that could have made his day so much better. It's like he's right there to being in that like upper tier conversation, but he just can't like break it. And I do worry a little bit about Beathard, and people are going to bring up the Iowa connection, because they played together in college, but I just don't think CJ Beathard is a competent quarterback. And so, I am a little worried about what that's going to do to Kittle's stock, but at the same time, I don't see any people in San Francisco that really are going to challenge him. Like the formula for being a tight end 1 is like not having any clear wide receiver 1 check, and having a quarterback who needs a safety blanket check. So do I fear that Kittle's going to fall out of tight end 1? No, I don't, but I don't know that he's going to move himself into a top tier tight end 1 this year either.
Yeah, we'll see. For tight ends, it doesn't take much these days with all these injuries at tight end.
True. That is true.
But moving along, the obvious guys here, Kyle Rudolph, Tyler Eifert, Travis Kelce doing their thing. But last guy here on my list here is your boy here, Mark Andrews, pushing his way towards that lead tight end role in Baltimore. A couple of good receptions. His stat line isn't spectacular here, but you could see. Can you pull up the snap count on him? Because it seems like every week he's getting more and more.
Count. No, I can't pull up the snap count right now.
Okay, because he's getting more and more involved in that offense.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
It's just a matter of time.
Yeah, and you're seeing him get the red zone looks too. Like Mark Andrews is a great athlete. Like he's an undercover athlete. And I think what you're going to see is when Hayden Hurst comes back, they're going to give him every shot with his first round pedigree. But I don't think they're going to take Andrews off the field either. I think they run a legit 2 tight end set pretty much every time. And I think you're going to start seeing that weigh in on Willie Snead. Like I think Snead kind of falls out of favor there. I think your four receivers on the field are going to be Hurst, Andrews, Crabtree, and John Brown. Like I think that's going to be the pecking order, and I think you'll see Willie Snead fall to a 5th option. But Andrews he can ball, man. He can play.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing him getting more involved as the season goes on. All right, so before we end the show tonight, we have one more listener question from John Weingarten. And Nick, what did he say today?
Yeah, so he was just asking, we kind of touched on it last week, but can we expect Pat Mahomes to do it, for the rest of the year? Because we had said we kind of expected him to come back down to earth a little bit. And again, he has another great week.
Yeah, I mean, he's on fire right now. Number one quarterback in football. But like we said last week, I'm going to pump the brakes for the whole season because his schedule's, we said it before, it's a little rough. He's got Jacksonville, Denver, Seattle, Cincinnati, Denver twice, Cleveland, the Rams, the Ravens. I mean, this is like legit defenses he's got to go up against. So he's on fire. He's doing his thing. But to answer the questions, I think we should pump the brakes a little bit. And I would not expect, to think 40, 50 points every week is kind of crazy, but he's going to come back down to earth a little bit, I would expect. And I don't know. What do you think, Nick?
Yeah. I mean, the offense is potent. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. They're going to put up points every week. He's a solid QB1 at this point in my mind. You can count on him. He's a plug and play type of guy. It's mindless. Put him in your lineup, let him go. Regardless of the defense, the offense is talented enough, and the game script is going to, play to where most games are probably going to be a shootout. But I again, don't think you come to expect 40 points from him weekly. I just don't think that's realistic.
No, and you don't want shootouts every week. I mean, Andy Reid is going to get Kareem Hunt the ball in some games, and they're going to just give him the rock and dominate the time of possession. They can do that. And that defense is very suspect, so you don't want to be in shootouts every week. So you've got to win that time of possession. You got to get Kareem Hunt more involved, and that'll temper his production a little bit there, plus the schedule I just talked about. So, yeah, but he's good to go, locked and loaded as a QB1 the rest of the way. So that'll be it for the show. Final thoughts? Any final thoughts, Nick?
No, I'm just excited for another week of football. Hopefully your fantasy seasons are going well. Hopefully some of the stuff that we're giving you is actionable. Just remember, let your rankings be fluid. Things can change. For me, that's McCaffrey jumping up into the top 5. And that's Bell and DJ slipping down outside of the top 5. So it's just, be fluid. Keep an open mind to the things that are happening around you, and don't be so set in your ways. There's always a price on everybody.
Final thoughts for me. Just want to give a shout out to Nate Dalton, John Weingarten, and Kyle Barker, who wrote in asking questions for today's episode, and a shout out to them for subscribing to the channel. And just wanted to thank them and anyone out there listening tonight for subscribing. Again, Ewok Juggernauts here for the Hot Pineapples. Just want to thank everyone out there for listening. And that'll be it for week 3. And we're going into week 4 of the season this week. And that'll be it. Thanks everyone again for watching. And everybody went by.
Wednesday, September 6th.
26th. We're in the future right now. Let me get my DeLorean and rev this thing up. So it's actually tomorrow. Why are people messaging me? How do I shut this damn thing off? So that's the rant, by the way.
Pretty sick. Sorry, man. I still hear it.
I can still get it.
I still hear it.
Yeah.
Feels like I kept having to check my phone. There it is.
Try it now. Do you hear it? Oh my good God. So let's start this whole thing from the top.
Yeah. I'm coming off my carry-on high, I'll say.
Okay, there you go.
Carry-on high.
Carry on, my wayward son. Well, there's some good outtake stuff there.
Yeah.
NFLMAX Radio.
Now you're all thrown off. You're on this huge rant.
Oh,